Now, test class. So what is a test class and when should I actually go for a test class? Very simple thing. Whenever you're writing something in Apex, that has to be tested by using Apex. Whenever you write something in Apex, you are testing the logic by using Apex. Okay, what is this? Why I am writing something in Apex and I have to test it in Apex? Why should I actually do it? Means, okay, now think like this. There is a requirement for you and you felt that this requirement cannot be achieved by using the configuration components, by using the admin components you cannot actually do it. So due to which you incline towards writing it in Apex. Fine, that is so good. Now, before moving that logic to production, someone in a company, testers will be there and they will be testing it. That is good till then. Now, how will a tester know that this particular logic, whatever you have written, is working for bulk records and is not working for a normal record? How will they know? There could be some instances where your code, you might have written a DML statement inside a for loop that will pass till 150 records. When you're trying to do bulk data load also, that will pass till 150 records because 150 DML is the limit for us. But if the user is trying to load 151 records, at that point of time it will fail. And QA people are the testers, whoever, the QA is another name for testers. So the QA people might not really test that specific scenario of loading 151 records. They might just load 100 records and say that okay, this has passed the bulk test. When I insert a single record, it has passed the bulk test. So there are some instances where your logic might fail. So it is your duty to ensure that whatever logic you have written is tested thoroughly. Now, how can you test it? Again, by using Apex only, you have to test it. Okay, what will happen if I do not test it? I am so confident that my logic is written in a very well efficient optimized way. I am confident, I don't want to test it. But still, Salesforce kept a prerequisite. What is that prerequisite? Means you cannot move your components from one org to another org. Now, maybe org and org is not the right word here. You cannot move your changes from sandbox to production. Production, I believe you all are aware of what environments in Salesforce are. And production is something which end users will be making use of. Sandbox is something which developers and testers will be making use of. You cannot move your changes from sandbox to production if the code coverage is less than 75%. Okay, what is this code coverage? Okay, fine. Code coverage is nothing but you have written a scenario. You have written a scenario that, let me take the trigger scenario only. You have written, you're trying to test this specific scenario. Whenever an account is created, set rating as hot. A very basic scenario. Whenever an account is created, set rating as hot. So for this, you have written a trigger. And by using Apex, you're testing this. I will tell you how to test it by using Apex, but let's assume that by Apex, you're trying to test this. Now, in this, the requirement got changed a bit. Set rating as hot when billing city is Dallas. Set rating as warm when billing city is California. Set rating as cold when billing city is New York. Okay, I just made up some requirement like this. Now you have tested it only for an account by creating with billing city as Dallas. Now only this scenario is covered. These scenarios are not covered. That is what code coverage means. Code coverage speaks about the scenario that you have covered in your code. If you have not covered the scenario in your code, then I will not cover this code for you. This is how it works. So based on the data that you're trying to use or based on the scenarios that you're trying to look at, those scenarios will speak about the code coverage. How many scenarios have you covered? That will define your code coverage. If you cover only one scenario for this, okay, then code coverage will be just 33% because all these three together is 100% and you have covered only one scenario, due to which I will give you just 33%. If you cover these two, okay, fine, then I will give you 66%. If you cover these three, then yes, you will get 100% or 99%, however it is. And then the prerequisite is when you are trying to move your changes from from sandbox to production, the prerequisite is that organization wide code coverage should be greater than 75%, greater than or equal to 75%. If it is less than 75, then deployment cannot be done. Okay, why can the deployment be not done? Means what is the guarantee that you have written your code in a proper way? You might have written unnecessarily some wrong scenarios in your code. And how will the testers know? If you have written some 100 unnecessary lines, how will the testers even get to know? Testers will just check if the functionality is working as expected or not. That is it. Testers will not get to know how many lines of code you have written. How will you get to know if you have written some unnecessary lines or not? Means you know the scenario and you will test that scenario by using Apex, and you can see that only this got covered and these lines are not getting covered. Then you can understand, okay, these lines are not even part of my requirement, so these lines are not even needed. Let me remove the lines which are doing it. In this way, you will be able to understand, or you will be able to eliminate the unnecessary lines of code that you have written which are not part of your code. That is first thing. So the first prerequisite that we have is 75% of org wide coverage. Second point is, every trigger that you are thinking to move should have at least 1% of coverage. Every trigger should have coverage for sure. If it is an Apex class, then yes, it is allowed. Even if the Apex class is holding 0% coverage and org-wide coverage is 75%, then it is allowed. But for triggers, at least 1% coverage is a prerequisite. There should be 1% coverage for sure. If you do not have 1% coverage for a trigger, then no, I am not allowing you. Then there is some mathematics that you really have to understand while speaking about org-wide coverage. Most of the developers, I would say out of 10, 8 developers really make a mistake while calculating the org-wide coverage. Now I have a class like this. Let's assume that I have a trigger. In this trigger, I have my number of lines as 15 and all the 15 lines are covered and I have 100% coverage. There is one more class by name contact, and in this like contact handler, let's say contact handler. And for this contact handler, there are 3 lines, and out of these 3 lines, I have covered only 1 line. So the coverage is 33%. Now you tell me, what is the org-wide coverage for me? Send me the messages. I wanted to see. What is the org-wide coverage? These are the 2 classes that I am thinking to send. And for the first class, I say 100% as the coverage. And for the second component, I see 33% as the coverage. Now I told you that org-wide coverage should be 75%. Now what is the org-wide coverage here? I see few people telling 33, few people 66, few people 99.8, 88.8, 34. Okay. If at all you are under the impression that it is just calculating the average of these two, if at all you are under such impression, okay, it is 100 and it is 33, 133 by 2 will be somewhere around 66. If you are under that impression, then no, you are entirely wrong. Org-wide coverage will not at all look at the coverages for the existing classes. It will not even look at them. Then instead of looking at them, what will it look for? It will look for the lines. Okay, what are the total lines that are covered in the entire system? Okay, 16 lines are covered. Out of how many lines? Out of 18 lines, only 16 lines got covered. Now do the calculation. 16 by 18 into 100. So this is how it will work. 16 by 18 into 100. I'm not that good in math. Let me do it. Okay, 88.8 is the org-wide coverage. Now, yes, few people got it right. 16 by 18. This is how org-wide coverage calculation happens. Do not look into the percentages for determining your org-wide coverage. Always look at the number of lines covered versus total number of lines present. When I say total number of lines present, there are few lines that can be ignored. What are those lines? First thing, anything which is kept as a comment, we will not take into consideration. Anything that is added as a comment, that will not be taken into consideration. System.debugs will also be not taken into consideration. Only the lines that are speaking about having some logic will be taken into consideration for determining the coverage. This is how it will work. So now we understood the concept of calculating the code coverage. Now let us see how should we test a specific scenario, and then we will be able to understand. Okay. Test class is nothing but an Apex class again. Test class is nothing but an Apex class again. Now, how will the system understand if this is an Apex class or this is a test class? Means for any class, if you add if you add an annotation at the very beginning, this should be at the very beginning. If you say that at the rate is test, then system will understand that, okay, this is a test class. This is not a normal class. This is a test class. That is how system will understand. Now let us take a basic scenario and see how a test class should be written. Now what I will do is I will write test class for my trigger. I will just open randomly some trigger, and for a trigger I will write the test class. I have my account trigger written, and into this trigger I will write a test class. Okay. Now, what is the scenario here? The scenario is whenever user is trying to insert an account with the industry as banking, then an opportunity should get created. A very basic scenario. Whenever you are trying to insert an account with industry as banking, an opportunity should get created. Now, if you are a tester and if I ask you to test this, how will you do? You will go, you will log into Salesforce org, you will come to account and you will click on new button, and then you will give billing city value as dollars, you will click on save, and then you will find that an opportunity record got created or not. This is what you will be doing. Now we will be doing the same by using an apex class. Let us understand how should we do that. So file, new, apex class. This time while giving the names, let us ensure that we are adding something called as at the rate test. It is not underscore test, it is not a prerequisite, but we are following this just to make ourselves sure that this is not a normal class but a test class. This is only for our understanding, it has nothing to do with the functionality. Clicking on OK. Now what is the prerequisite here? Class must be annotated with is test. Okay, fine. So at the very beginning, let us put something called as at the rate is test. That is something which we are doing. Then what should we do now? We have to test this. How? What is the scenario that has to be tested? Insert an account with industry as banking, and once you do that, an opportunity should get created. Verify if the opportunity is created or not. That's it, you are done. That is one scenario. Okay, fine, that is the scenario. Now for any scenario you have, make sure that you need to have a method. For every scenario you need to have one method. So now in the same way I am writing a method. While writing a method, there is one more prerequisite stating that the method whatever I am writing must be of type static. There is a prerequisite. The method must be of type static, and it will not return anything because you are testing something. Why will it return you back? So it should be of test void. Then the method name or the scenario name or whatever you wanted to check. I am just giving insert account as my name. Fine. Static void insert account. But for the system to understand that this is not a normal method but a test method, what you have to do is again say at the rate is test before the method. You have to add this annotation because a test class can hold normal method and a test method also. So what kind of method is this? This is a test method, due to which you have to specify again at the rate is test, or there is one more way, you can just say test method. Anything will work just the same. You can say static test method void method name, or you can say at the rate is test. Now speaking about the scenario, this is the prerequisite, this is the syntax that we have to follow. Now speaking about the way, scenario is very clear that we have to insert an account with billing city as dollars. What is the process of inserting an account? How will we insert an account? We follow the very normal process, which is account ACC is equal to new account, and then what we'll be doing, acc dot name is equal to test class account, acc dot billing city equal to dollars, and then insert acc. That's it. If you do it, you're done. You're just trying to insert an account. Now you can ask me, okay, fine, insertion of account is absolutely fine. Now what should I do next means, once you are done writing your test class, you see something called as run test. Okay, fine, let me click on this run test. When you click on this run test, system will run the test for you. You have a tab called test tab. System will run the test for you, and you can see failures and total. What is this failures and total means? Number of methods you write will be coming up over here. How many methods are there? Methods are nothing but scenarios. How many scenarios are there? Only one scenario is there, and among them how many are failures? Zero failures. And now let us quickly go and see if there is an account record that has been created with name as test class or not. There is no such account with that name. Why? At this point of time, we have to understand one fact that whatever data you are creating in a test class will not impact real time data at all. This will be created and this will be deleted immediately once the test execution is done. Deletion is not the right word, but creation and deletion will not really impact the real time data at all. You have to create your own set of data, do the corresponding manipulations, check if it is working fine or not, and then don't worry about deletion. System will take care of it. This will not be present anywhere in the system. Okay, fine. Now you told me that this is the scenario. Now how will I know the coverage? You told me something called as coverage, right? What is it about? Okay, fine. Come to this trigger and you can see this button, right? Code coverage. Just click on it and say all tests are, do something like this. And if you see here, it covered till here because you are inserting something. Okay, my trigger coverage came. But if you see only 3 lines are covered and it did not go even inside. Why did it not go inside? Because the data whatever you are trying to give here is not matching this if condition. You did for some other thing, so due to which this code is not covered. If you feel that you have unnecessarily written this logic, then remove it. But if you feel that this logic is needed, you need to have this means, then include your scenario to state that industry should be banking. Now if you see code coverage is 36%. How is the code coverage 36? Means if you see out of 11 lines only 4 lines got covered. Out of 11 lines only 4 lines got covered, due to which my coverage is 36%. Now what will I do? I will come here and I will tell to the system that okay, industry is equal to banking. This is the scenario that I'm actually trying to do. You have specified industry is equal to banking, and then you click on run test. Now again it got passed, and now if you come here and if you see the coverage is 100% now. Now you can ask me, code got covered, but what is the guarantee that opportunity is created? In real time users will not just click account and leave it, right? They will verify if the opportunities are created for that specific account or not. Now how can I do that? Means okay, now you wanted to verify if opportunities are created or not. For verifying, what we will be doing, we will be querying for them. Though they are not actually present in the database, they do not show up when you try to do it, but inside the test class till the execution of this method the data will be available to you, but not outside the test class, only within the test class, and that too in that specific method only it will be available for you. So you can say lst select id comma name from opportunity, where account id, you have this account id with you, where account id is equal to acc.id. You can account ID. Okay, and then once you have written this SQL query, now you wanted to verify. What do we have to verify? If opportunity is created or not. How can we verify? Means there is one method given for us called asset equals. There is something called as asset equals. Now what do we have to verify? We just have to verify that this lstopp, how many opportunities should get created? Only one opportunity should get created. So you are just verifying. Okay, let me, this should be one here, and this is how it should be. Okay, so what are we trying to verify now? Here we are trying to verify that there are opportunities created for this account. How many opportunities should be there? Only one opportunity should be there. We are just verifying what is the size of it. It should be only one. And then what is the other thing that we have to verify? We should verify that the name should be same as account's name. Okay, fine, let's also do that. System.asset equals, what should be the name? This should be the name of my opportunity. Okay, fine. This is the expected result. What is the actual result? Actual result, you can see it by putting something like this dot name. Now we are trying to verify that exactly one opportunity has been created, and for this one opportunity you are ensuring that name is something like this. Now we are clicking on run test. Now you can see it has been passed completely. Now what I will do is I will tell that I am expecting something like this to happen, and if I do something like this one, when I click on run test, everything went fine, but still my scenario failed. If you see, out of one got failed. Why? Because name is not this, but you're expecting something like this, but the actual result is conflicting with the expected result, due to which I cannot allow this to be passed. So make sure that you are writing your test data in a proper way. If you feel that there is some issue with your test data, or if you feel that the logic has to be written in a proper way, then go and correct your logic. This is how you have to test your Apex logic, whatever you are trying to write. This is the process. Now let me tell few points here. First thing, if at all you wanted to test this for bulk records, let's say for 200 records, you can just say for integer I is equal to 0, I less than 200, and then I plus plus, and then have all your logic written inside this. Maybe create one list variable just to avoid DML inside for loop. List of account lstacc is equal to new list of account, and then you can say lstacc. Now let's assume that you have written this DML statement inside the for loop. Now what will happen? The moment you try to execute this specific test scenario, immediately it will fail. Immediately it will fail. Okay, now what we will do is we will just verify for only one record rather than looking at our everything. We will just look for only one record. We can also do that. Okay, now we are inserting 200 records, thus by ensuring that our trigger will not fail for bulk scenarios. And then what are we trying to do? Out of these 200 records, we have randomly opened one specific record, and for that one record, we are checking if the opportunity has been created only one opportunity, and then the opportunity name is something like this. And you are clicking on run test here. If you see now, it got failed. Okay, why is it failed now? It is telling that system.list line number 15. Okay, it is telling that there is some error, list index out of bounds. And if you look at it, it is telling that at line number 15 there is some error. Okay, what is that error at line number 15? It is telling that list index is out of bounds. This list is empty, or this list is null. This list is empty because you have initialized this list is empty. But what are you trying to do? For an empty list, you are telling to the system to fetch the first row, and from the first row you are telling to get the ID. This list is empty. How are you telling to the system to fetch ID of the first row? Okay, now let us understand why is this list empty. Because you have not added anything into this list. We missed to add one line here to add the corresponding entry into the list. So let us do that, and now let us click on run test to see how well this system behaves. Now if you see, it is taking quite some time. Earlier it did not take this much time, but now it took quite some time. And now we can see that okay, it has passed completely. And when we come to the trigger, we see that the code coverage is absolutely fine. We are getting 100% coverage because we have covered the bulk scenario. I mean, it's not because you have covered the bulk scenario, because you have written the corresponding scenario for which the code coverage should occur. But what did we actually try to do inside test class? We have inserted 200 accounts. Out of 200 accounts, for a random account, we are verifying if one opportunity got created, and for that one opportunity, if the name is actually matching with the name whatever you gave for the account. That is what we have verified. And yes, you can see that it got passed, and you can also see that the coverage being pumped up. Now let us understand few more things. Aditya, just because it is on account, it is very easy. But now let's assume that I have to write something on an opportunity line item. Opportunity line item is a child for opportunity. Now I have to insert one account, and I have to insert one opportunity, and then I have to insert some price book entries, and then I have to insert an opportunity line item. It is too big, and if I put everything in one method, I will be getting an error, right? Stating that I'm hitting governor limits. In real time, I will be inserting only one account once. Once account is inserted, only then I will insert opportunity. Once opportunity is inserted, only then I will insert line item. I will not do everything in a single transaction. Even when you speak about doing data load, first I will insert records only into account. Once account is done, only then I will come into opportunity. Only then I will come into the other object. But how can I do that over here? I have to put everything in a single method, right? When I do it in a single method, the chances are quite high for me to hit governor limits. Is there any way for me to avoid governor limits in this specific scenario? Means yes, there is a way. What should we do? Salesforce is providing a flexibility to get a fresh set of governor limits by making use of these two methods, test.start test and test.stop test. You have something called as start test and stop test. What are they for? Okay, normally each and every method is one scenario, and every method is one transaction. That is what you have to understand. It is one transaction. In this specific transaction, whatever you write outside this block, will have one set of governor limits, like 100 SQL queries, 150 Dml operations. And whatever you write inside this block will be given another fresh set of governor limits, which means in one method you can write 200 SQL queries, you can have 300 Dml operations. How? By making use of start test and stop test. So whatever you write inside start test and stop test will be given or will be issued a fresh set of governor limits. Okay, does it mean that I can write multiple start tests and stop tests in one method? No, you cannot. In one method, you can write only one start test and one stop test. And whatever you write inside start test and stop test will be given a fresh set of governor limits. I have seen few people doing something like this. Few people, whenever I ask someone to write a test class, this is what most of the people will be doing. But I do not actually understand how is it advantageous. You are taking the fresh set, but you are not at all making use of the existing set that was given to you. How is it advantageous to you? You are not at all making use of the existing set given. You are just making use of the fresh set. Now again, whatever logic you write will be having only hundreds of queries and 150 DML. If you use test that start test and stop test only for little code, only for something like this, and for the others if you do not have, then okay. For this you will be given one set, and for the rest you will be given other set. But when you say start test at the first line and stop test at the last line, then you are getting still only one set only. You are making use of one set. That is not a good way of making use of start test and stop test. Leveraging start test and stop test is good for getting fresh set of governor limits. But does it mean that I just want only the fresh set, I do not want the existing set means? Then it's of no use. It's a technically incorrect code. So remember to make use of start test and stop test for obtaining fresh set of governor limits, not for the entire code, but for only some piece of code where you see that you might be hitting the governor limits. System.assert equals will assure you that the expected value and actual value are just one and the same. We also have something called a system.assert not equals. If you want to compare, you can maybe do that as well. So this is the process of testing something. Now you can create one more method, because each method speaks about one scenario, right? You can create one more method, but let me tell you that whatever data you have created in this method will not be available in this method. Whatever data you have created in this method is not available in this method. You have to again create your fresh set of data. If you create one more scenario, if you create one more method, again in that method also the data whatever is created in the first two methods will not be available to you. You again have to create your own set of data, which means it is more like duplicating the code. You are unnecessarily duplicating the code. I mean, if at all the logic is something which is similar, you are unnecessarily duplicating the code. Now let's take that your trigger is an opportunity line item. You have to create account, you have to create opportunity, you have to create some price book entries. These three are mandatory for you. In all the three methods, these three are mandatory. For opportunity line item, yes, you can give different values, but these three are very mandatory, and these three are holding the same logic. In insert account it is holding same logic, insert account 1 it is holding same logic, insert account 3 it is holding same logic. Unnecessarily lines are being duplicated and data cannot be shared. Now what should I do in those scenarios means, just create a normal method, static void create data. In this method, logic for all the data can be kept, all the generic data. In order to avoid duplicate logic, put everything over here, and in this method just call create data. Just call create data once. That's it, data will be present for this. And in this method also call create data. And in this method as well you can call create data, and thus you are ensuring that you are eliminating duplicate lines of code. But now you might feel that why should I again write that specific line of calling a method? Is there any other way? Why should I do that again? Don't I have any other way means? Yes, there is one other way for you. That is nothing but Salesforce recently, when I say recently, maybe 2 to 3 years back only came up with this special annotation called test setup. You have something called as test setup. When you create a normal method with annotation as test setup, whatever data is created in this method will be shared by all the methods. Whatever data is present in this method, that will be available in all the methods. You don't have to again call. Whatever data is created, that will be present across all the methods. So this is how you will be creating test methods for your specific scenarios, and thus you will be getting the coverage. Now remember that org-wide coverage calculation, not org-wide, any code coverage calculation will happen based on the number of lines covered by total number of lines. Now you can tell me that okay, for trigger it is easy for me because trigger is just creation of a record or updation of a record. The moment you update a record, trigger will get fired automatically. Now what about a method which is getting invoked from a aura component? I have written a method and that is being invoked from a aura component. Now how should I call, how should I cover that specific scenario? What is the process means? Don't worry, just come here, you know the method and you know the class name. Just say class name dot method name, that's it, because it is a static method. Just say class name dot method name. When you say class name dot method name, that method will do something. Once that execution is done, again use system dot assert equals to ensure that it had performed the job which has to be done or not. So just call that method directly, because in aura component also when you click on a button, that method is getting called, but again you cannot click on a button in a test class, right? That is why you are directly calling the method, and once that method is called, whatever operation it should perform, it should perform, and you can use assert equals to verify that the operation is done effectively or not. So this is one way of calling a method which is being used not in a trigger but in a visual force space or in an apex or in an aura or LWC components. But nevertheless, it is a prerequisite that when you are trying to deploy something from sandbox to production, org-wide coverage should be greater than 75%, and each trigger that you are trying to move is holding at least 1% of coverage. These are the two prerequisites that are to be taken into consideration. I will just take a quick recap of the things that we have covered here. So in order to ensure that logic whatever you have written is not breaking for bulk records or it is being tested by using Apex, we will go for a Apex test class. How will you tell to the system that it is not a normal class but a test class? By making use of an annotation called @istest. So for any class, if you say @istest, it will system will understand that okay, this is a test class and this button will appear run test. If you open any trigger or class, that button won't be appearing. That button will be appearing only when you open a test class, only for a test class. How will the system understand that is a test class? By having this annotation. Okay. Now, inside a test class, can I have normal methods or do I need to have only test scenarios? Means you can have normal methods, but can they be called? No, they cannot be called from anywhere because you have created a method in a test class that cannot be called from anywhere. That has to be used only within the test class only. Okay, fine. Now, second thing, how can I tell that it is a normal method or not a test method, or how can I tell that it is a test method or it is a scenario, not a normal method? Means you have to again tell @is test before the method. If you specify @is test, only then the system will understand that okay, this is more of a test method, this is more of a scenario. Then does it mean that if I try to insert a record, will that record be inserted in real time? No. Whatever you try to do within this test class, that will be available only during the time of execution of test class. Once test class execution is done, it will hold no traces of data in the system at all. Okay. Now I have a scenario to update a record. Do I have to create a record and then update it, or can I choose an existing record and update it? Means two ways. You can create a record and update it, or you can query for the existing record that is present in the system and update it. For you to access existing data that is present in the system, you have to explicitly mention that see all data is equal to true. Only if you say see all data equal to true, system will query for the existing record. System will show you the existing records that are actually present. Test class cannot be annotated. Give me 1 minute. I think I missed the syntax here. See all data equal to true. Enter it is test. Or did they stop following this? I have to check test class cannot be annotated. Depending on the AP version you're using, the default annotation can vary. Okay. Understood. Okay. There is a prerequisite stating that when you have test setup, see all data equal to true cannot be used. When you do not have test setup, it will allow. Okay. I missed that point. Okay. So when you say see all data equal to true, system can make use of the real-time data and make some changes to it, but they will not really impact. Now you can ask me, when I have see all data equal to true, why should I actually worry about creating my own set of data? Means it is always recommended to create your own set of data and perform necessary updates rather than relying on the data that is present in your org. Was there any reason for that? Yes, there is a reason. Now let us assume that you are having a update trigger on one object. You are having an update trigger on an account object, and you are thinking to use the existing data rather than creating your own set of data. So what have you done? You made see all data is equal to true and you queried for the account record, and then you made some updates to it by using assert equals. You ensured that expected result and actual result are just one and the same, and code coverage came in your org. Everything went fine. Now you are trying to move this component into your production, into your target org. At that point of time, let us assume that your production is not holding any account record at all. Your production is not holding any account record at all. Now what is your test class doing? Your test class is querying for an account record and trying to do an update. That there are no records found, due to which your test class will turn you an error and code coverage will not be met, due to which deployment will fail. You can be so sure, or you can be 100%, you can provide 100% guarantee about the data and the code that is present in your org. But when you're trying to do deployment, there is no guarantee that the target org is holding enough data for your test process to pass. So due to which it is always recommended to make sure that you are preparing your own set of data in your test class. You can insert, you can delete, you can undelete, you can do whatever you want, but do everything in your test class rather than relying on the existing data. That is why if you see, if you do not specify anything, data will not be available. For the data to be available to you, you have to explicitly say see all data is equal to true. That is how you have to do. You have to explicitly say see all data equal to true. Only if you mention that, it will be allowing, else it will not even take existing data into consideration at all. Then okay, fine, we have different methods written, and each method is independent, each method is one transaction, and whatever data I create in the first method is not available in the second method, whatever data I create in the second method is not available in the other methods. Now I see a lot of duplicate lines that are being present. I do not want that to be present, I want to have them in one. Another block means, then comes to the rescue of at the rate test setup. You can create one normal method and annotate with at the rate test setup, and in this method you can create all the data whatever you have, and this method will be implicitly called from all these three methods automatically. You don't have to say create data again, this will be called automatically, and the data will be available in all these three methods. This is basically helpful to avoid duplicate lines of code from being written. This is how test setup will help you. Now you might think that okay, when I am trying to do DML on multiple records, I have to insert accounts and then opportunities and then some other objects. I am doing all this, the chances are quite high that now I am hitting governor limits. Is there a way? Means yes, you can use test.start test and test.stop test. By using start test and stop test, you will be given a fresh set of governor limits, but that fresh set of governor limits will be applied only to the logic that is written within that specific block. Any logic written outside start test and stop test will have the existing governor limits. Written inside start test and stop test will have fresh set of governor limits. That is how start test and stop test will work for us. Okay, now I have created data, now I wanted to compare values. What should I do? System.assert equals or system.assert not equals, whatever works for you. By using that, you can compare existing value with the actual value, and thus you can ensure that your system is behaving as expected. And then if I want to run all the tests, what should I do? Just come here and say new run, and then choose all the test classes, choose all the methods, and then click on run. You can do it, that is one way. Or what you can also do is come here, there is something called as apex test execution. Come here, apex test execution, click on this, and here also you can click on select test. When you click on select test, all the existing test classes that are present in your system will be available to you. Currently we have only one test class, due to which only one is appearing. Just click on this and click on run. Even this will do the same job. This is no less than doing it from developer console. You can either run it from developer console or you can do it from over here. But if you wanted to see which line has been covered and which line is not covered, then developer console is the only place for you. You can go to developer console to see the lines that got covered. But in normal in the normal view, you cannot see which line got covered and which line did not get covered. So this is how you will be writing test classes. Now one last point to be really aware of is, there are few objects called setup objects. There is something called as setup object inside Salesforce. What is this setup object? Setup object is nothing but wait, huh. This is just like a normal S object, but it is holding some extra privilege. What is this means? You can see that. Okay, if you see here, we have few setup objects and few are called as non-setup objects. How is the differentiation happening means, setup object speaks much about the organization setup. When it's organization setup, how many users are there? What is the license allocated to them? How many profiles are there? And for which profile, what is the license given? So when you're dealing with something related to the organization, not about your objects and data, when you're dealing something related to the organization, that is considered as a setup object. Normal objects, whichever we do for creation of our records, we call them as non-setup objects. Okay, we see tabs, right? For creation of object, we see tabs. For any data you create by using a tab, it is a non-setup object. Any data you create by using a tab is a non-setup object. But For users and for profiles, you do not have tabs. You have to go to the corresponding section and then do something for a record to get created. They are not created by using a tab. They are created in a different way because they're setup objects. Now in a test class, you not in a test class, in real time, you cannot insert record into one setup object and into one non setup object at once. You cannot do that. You cannot insert record into user and account at once. You can insert a user normally, you can insert account normally, but you cannot do both of them in a single transaction. If you do both of them in a single transaction, you will be getting an error called mixed DML operation. What is this mixed DML operation means? The way how DML happens for setup object is different when compared with the way how DML happens for a non-setup object. When you're trying to do DML on setup and non-setup at once, system cannot process it and it will return you an error stating that mixed DML operation. Okay, fine. Now, as part of my transaction, I have to do it. I have written a logic stating that if at all user belonging to a specific profile, sales rep, is trying to create an account, then do something for him. Now how can I do it in my test class? I have to create a user record belonging to that profile. If I do not create a user record, then it will throw me an error. But if I create a user record and if I create an account record, immediately I'm getting a different error stating that mixed DML operation. Then how should I avoid it? Means okay, fine, very simple. What you can do is logic for insertion of user. Okay, you have, I'll remove everything now. You have insertion of user logic, something like this: user, new user, and then all the fields whatever you have to do, okay, do them, and then insert obj user. This is what you're doing. Then what should happen? Then you have to insert records into the account object, correct? Now rather than inserting account records in the same method, what you can do is create a new method, static void insert acc, and write the logic for account insertion, and then annotate this method with @future. Now what will happen? It will come till here, but it will call this method, but this method is annotated with @future, due to which this will be handled as a new transaction. This will be handled as a different transaction. Now what is our limitation? Our limitation is both should not be done in a single transaction. But what are we trying to do? We are trying to bypass it by doing them in a different transactions. Now you can ask me, Acha, you kept @future here. @future means asynchronous. Now I don't know when will this be executed because it depends on the resource availability. Does it mean that whatever coverage I see might really increase after few minutes once the execution is done? Means no. Though it is asynchronous, whenever you are trying to do something, whenever you are trying to invoke an asynchronous apex inside a test class, it is still considered synchronous. Though it is asynchronous, but still it is considered synchronous because we want to see the results immediately. We cannot really wait for it. Because we want to see the results immediately, they will be executed immediately. But still, from a transaction point of view, it is considered as two transactions, due to which we will not get an error. But it will be executed synchronously, but from a different transaction point of view, due to which we are able to avoid mixed DML operation error, point number one. And second thing, we are able to see the results immediately. So mixed DML operation is something which will be asked very, very frequently in most of the interview calls. Do not tell them that mixed DML is more like something which you see only in test classes. You can also see this in real time also. If you want to insert user record and account record at once, you will be seeing the same error. So what is the way to avoid it? Means okay, we will handle them into different transactions. How can we do it? By making use of asynchronous apex. We will handle setup objects in one transaction and we will handle non-setup objects in a different transaction, and thus we are ensuring that no mixed DML error occurs. How can we do it in test class? Again, you can do the same thing in test class as well. Okay, so what we are trying to do is we are inserting a user record and then we are calling this. This is how we are actually getting the things done.